Before that, Goma had been small and warm and familiar. It smelled of charcoal smoke and boiled beans. It sounded like radios humming and her father's voice reading aloud in the evenings. John, everyone called him Mwalimu because he was a teacher used to lift Akonkwa onto his shoulders so she could reach the mango tree behind their house. Slowly, he would say, laughing. Knowledge grows the same way. Slowly, she remembered his hands most. Strong, chalk-stained, gentle. Before that day, the sky in Goma was gentle. It was blue in the mornings and orange in the evenings, and sometimes it rained so softly it felt like the clouds were whispering secrets to the earth. I used to lie on my back outside our house and count birds while my father corrected my counting. "You skipped a number," he would say, tapping my forehead lightly. Numbers matter. My father was a teacher. He believed in order, in learning, in a world that made sense. When he spoke, his voice was calm, steady, as if nothing bad could ever happen while he was nearby. That was before the war. On the morning everything changed, I woke up to the sound of shouting. At first, I thought it was the market. Goma was always loud vendors calling out prices, radios arguing with one another, children laughing and crying all at once. But this sound was different. It was sharper, angry. Then the ground shook. The walls rattled like they were afraid. A loud crack split the air, so violent I screamed before I understood what fear was. My mother rushed into the room, her wrapper half-tied, her eyes wide and wild. "Wake up," she said, her voice shaking. "Wake up now." Bahati sat up beside me, already crying. She was 10 then, old enough to know that something terrible was happening, old enough to be afraid for all of us. "What is it, Mama?" she asked. My mother didn't answer. She just pulled us to her chest, holding us so tightly I could feel her heart beating fast and uneven. Outside, people were running. Gunshots cracked through the air, short, sharp sounds like the sky itself was breaking apart. I buried my face into my mother's cloth, breathing in her familiar scent, trying to disappear. "John," my mother whispered. My father appeared in the doorway, already dressed, his face tense. The calm in his eyes was gone. "We have to leave," he said. Now. I had never heard fear in his voice before. We didn't pack much. There was no time. My mother grabbed a small bag. My father wrapped our school papers and his teaching certificate in plastic, as if those pieces of paper could protect us. I clung to my doll, one eye missing, her cloth dress torn. My father almost took it away to make me walk faster, but then he stopped himself. "Let her have it," he said softly. Outside, smoke curled into the sky. I could taste it on my tongue. People pushed past us, shouting names, crying, praying. Someone fell near us and didn't get back up. "Don't look," my father told me, lifting me onto his shoulders. From up there, I could see everything. Houses burned, men ran with guns. A woman screamed for her child. I covered my father's eyes with my small hands, trying to protect him the way he had always protected me. He laughed weakly. "It's okay," he said. "I've got you." I believed him. We walked for hours. My legs hurt. My head ached from the noise and smoke. Bahati held my mother's hand, silent now, her face tight like she was holding something inside. The road grew crowded, too crowded. That's when we saw the soldiers. They stood across the road, blocking it completely. Their uniforms were dirty. Their guns were raised casually, like toys they were bored of. My father stopped walking. My mother's fingers dug into my arm. A soldier shouted, "Everyone stop!" People froze. Another voice rang out. Men to the left, women and children to the right. I didn't understand what the words meant, but my body did. My stomach twisted. My father slowly lowered me from his shoulders. "Papa?" I asked. He knelt in front of me, his hands shaking as they held my face. "Listen to me," he said. "You must be brave." I nodded, even though I didn't know what brave meant. He kissed my forehead, then Bahati's. Then he stood and looked at my mother. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. My mother was crying openly now, her hands trembling as she held onto his shirt. "I will find you," he said. Then strong hands pulled him away. I screamed his name. He turned once, just once, before disappearing into the crowd of men. That was the last time I saw my father as the man he used to be, and that was the moment my childhood ended. Hunger was the first thing the camp taught me properly. Not the kind of hunger that makes you complain or cry, but the kind that settles into your bones and stays there. The kind that makes your head feel light and your thoughts slow, like they are wading through mud. Every morning, my mother tied her wrapper tightly and sent Bahati and me to stand in the food line. "Do not fight," she told us. "Do not answer insults. Just wait." Waiting was dangerous. People pushed. Children fell. Once, I saw a woman bite another woman's arm because she thought she was being skipped. Sometimes, after hours of waiting, the food ran out. When that happened, my mother smiled and said, "Tomorrow." I learned later that tomorrow was a lie mothers told so their children would sleep. The camp was a place where time lost meaning. Days blurred together, marked only by food distribution, sickness, and death. Children learned which adults were kind, which ones stole, which ones disappeared at night and never came back. Noella learned to barter. A piece of soap for maize, a scarf for salt. She learned how to look hard so no one would take from her daughters. Every choice she made was about survival. At night, I listened to adults whisper. "They say the men are being trained," someone said. "They say they are forcing them to fight," another answered. I pressed my ear to the wall. "Papa is strong," I whispered to Bahati. "He will come back." The soldier did not shout again. He didn't need to. Men were already being pulled from the crowd, dragged by their arms, shoved with gun barrels. I watched my father straighten his back as if he was preparing for a lesson, not a war. "Papa?" I spoke. He turned when I called him, and for a moment I thought he would run back to us. Instead, he smiled a smile, too careful, too practiced. "Stay with Mama," he said. A soldier grabbed his shoulder. "Men," the soldier barked, "you join us or you die here." I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. It was the same tone men used when killing chickens in the yard, calm, final. My mother screamed, "No, he is a teacher, he is not a fighter." The soldier laughed and shoved my father forward. John knew then that there would be no choice. The men beside him, farmers, shopkeepers, students, were shaking. Some begged. Some tried to run and were beaten until they stopped moving. The rebels did not want volunteers. They wanted bodies. "Pick," one commander said, tapping his gun against his palm. "Fight with us or die here." John thought of his daughters. He stepped forward. They lined the men up like they were sacks of maize. My father stood with them. His shirt was dusty now. A man beside him was crying openly, begging to be spared. The rebels didn't answer him. I ran toward Papa, but my mother pulled me back so hard I fell. "Nola," my father shouted. That was the first time I heard him say my mother's name like that, like it was tearing his chest open. I screamed until my throat burned. I saw them hand my father a gun. It looked too heavy for him. Then they marched them away. John did not look back again. He couldn't. If he did, he would run, and running meant death. As the line of men disappeared down the road, he heard his youngest daughter crying his name. The sound followed him like a curse. When Papa was taken, the world did not stop. It broke, and then it kept moving, dragging us with it. Mama grabbed my hand so tightly it hurt, but I didn't cry about that. I was too busy crying his name. "Papa!" I screamed as people pushed past us. "Papa, come back!" But there were too many bodies, too many voices, too much dust. I couldn't see him anymore. The road was alive with panic. Mama held on to us while move. She had heard women speak about the terrors of the bush, how rebels ambushed travelers, robbed them, raped women and children. Every day felt like a new horror was waiting. People ran in every direction, women carrying babies on their backs, men dragging sacks of grain, children screaming for parents who were no longer there. Gunshots cracked in the distance, sharp and final, sending waves of terror through the crowd. Different rebel groups clashed across villages and roads. No one knew who was fighting who anymore, only that everyone was running. Noella pulled Bahati close with one arm and dragged Akonkwa with the other, her heart pounding louder than the gunfire. "Don't let go," she kept saying. "Don't let go." My feet hurt. I didn't understand why we were walking so fast. "Mama," I cried, stumbling. "I'm tired. Papa will find us, right?" Mama didn't answer. She just kept walking. They slept that first night on the side of the road, hidden behind tall grass. There were no blankets, no fire, only fear. Mosquitoes descended as soon as the sun disappeared. Akonkwa slapped at her arms and legs, crying as bites swelled on her skin. "It itches," she whimpered. "Mama, make it stop." Noella brushed her hands gently. "Shh. Sleep, my child. Sleep." Akonkwa cried for her father until exhaustion pulled her under. Every night was the same. I cried for Papa. "Papa will come," I said over and over. "He promised." Bahati whispered, "Sleep, Akonkwa. Papa knows where we are." I believed her because I had to. The days blurred together. They walked under a sun that showed no mercy. The heat pressed down on them, burning their skin, drying their mouths. Water was scarce. When they found some, it was muddy and warm. Noella drank last, always. Food disappeared quickly. One handful of wild berries was shared between them. Akonkwa cried from hunger until her body grew too tired to protest. Her steps slowed. She stumbled often. The sun was angry. It burned my head and made my eyes hurt. My mouth felt like sand. "Mama," I whispered. "I'm thirsty." Mama wiped sweat from her face and gave me the last sip. "Just a little more," she said. "Just a little." I didn't know how much little was. They passed bodies. Some were covered with cloth, some were not. Akonkwa asked questions Noella could not answer. "Why is that man sleeping on the road?" Mama said, "Don't look." Bahati turned Akonkwa's head away. I saw blood on the ground. I didn't know what it meant, but it made my stomach hurt. "Papa will clean it," I said softly. "He always fixes things." No one answered. After days that felt endless, they heard it before they saw it, the sound of many voices, coughing, crying, shouting. The refugee camp rose from the dust like a wounded city. Not just tents, but broken buildings, plastic shelters, wooden frames, patched walls made of cloth and metal. Noella collapsed to her knees. They had made it. I didn't understand why Mama was crying. "We're here," she whispered. "We're alive." I looked around, confused. "Papa isn't here," I said. Mama pulled me into her chest so tightly I could barely breathe. "I know," she whispered. "I know. That was the first night I didn't cry for Papa. I was too tired. That road changed them. It took something from all three of them: innocence, softness, certainty. And when they entered the camp, they did not arrive whole. They arrived surviving. By nightfall, John would be wearing a uniform that was not his. By morning, he would be beaten for holding the gun wrong. By the end of the week, he would learn how to shoot. The road felt empty after they left, like something had been ripped out of it. I kept asking where Papa was going. My mother didn't answer. Bahati held my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. We walked again, but now we were slower, heavier. like we were dragging something invisible behind us. By the time we reached the camp, the sun was low and red. The refugee camp was not one place. It was many things stitched together by desperation. There were tents, yes, torn and sagging, but also plastic sheet shelters held up by sticks, abandoned school buildings crammed with families, churches with floors covered in sleeping bodies, half-built houses with no roofs where people slept under the sky. Smoke hung constantly in the air, children cried. Men argued. Women stood in lines that went nowhere. They gave us space inside an old classroom with no windows. Chalk dust still covered the floor. I thought of my father standing at a blackboard somewhere else, and my chest hurt so badly I couldn't breathe. That night I asked my mother again. Did Papa choose to leave us? She slapped the ground hard. No, she said. Never. Her voice broke, and she pulled us into her arms, rocking back and forth. They took him. That was the night Noella stopped believing in quick returns. She understood what joining the rebels meant. She had heard the stories: forced fighting, disappearances, bodies never returned. She held her daughters and stared into the darkness, knowing she was now a widow in everything but name. I slept on the cold floor with my head on Bahati's arm. I dreamed my father was calling me, but every time I ran toward him, he moved farther away. When I woke up, my throat hurt from crying in my sleep. That was my first night as a refugee. That was the night I learned that men could be taken, and little girls could do nothing but watch. Akonkwa, first person. 5 years passed without asking me. One day I was small enough for my father's shoulders, and then I wasn't. My legs grew long, my voice changed. I learned how to stand in line without crying and how to swallow hunger quietly. I was 10 years old now. In the camp, people measured time differently. Not by birthdays, by who disappeared, by who died, by who stopped hoping. My mother stopped talking about the future. She spoke only of today. Fetch water. Help at the stand. Watch your sister. Those were the only plans we had. Akonkwa, first person. Mama said aid was not enough. Aid ends, she told Bahati one morning, tying her headscarf tight. Hunger does not. Around us, people were already working, even before the sun was fully awake. Women sold charcoal in small black piles. Others fried dough in old pans, the oil reused until it smoked. Some fear, lucky ones with a good education and connections in the camp, worked in the offices and school. Men fixed shoes with wire and glue. Some washed clothes by the tap, charging per bucket. Nothing was too small to sell. Surviving on aid alone was dangerous. When trucks didn't come, people starved. Noella was no longer the woman John had married. The war stripped her gently at first, then violently. Hunger carved her face sharp. Her arms thinned. Her eyes hardened. Mama started with vegetables. A few tomatoes, some onions, greens tied with string. She spread them on a piece of sack near the path. Bahati and I helped shout. Then a stand. Mama's vegetable stand was small, just a wooden board balanced on stones near the camp road. Some days she sold everything. Some days, nothing. When men tried to cheat her, she raised her voice. I am not blind, she said. I am not weak. She learned how to shout, how to threaten, how to stare men down until they looked away. She starved so her daughters could eat. Her body bent, but she did not break. At night, Mama counted her money slowly. Enough for soap, she said once. Another night, enough for salt. Never enough to rest. In the camp, survival did not come from one place. It came from hands that refused to be empty. And Mama's hands never were. I watched her and learned. 5 years into the war, John no longer flinched at gunfire. His hands were steady now, his body scarred, his eyes permanently tired. He had stopped counting days. He counted seasons instead. When the air grew cooler and the nights longer, He knew Christmas was approaching. It always hurt the most then. Every Christmas was the same. Same food, same struggles, and painful reminders of what we lost. But this year, it felt different. The air in the camp changed. People began whispering about Christmas. Not with joy, with memory. Aid workers promised rations. Some women talked about cooking something special if they could. I followed Bahati everywhere that week. She knew I was going to ask. We lay on our mat one evening, the air cold enough to make my skin prickle. "Bahati," I said. She sighed immediately. "No, I haven't even asked yet." "You don't need to," she said. "I know." I turned onto my side, facing her back. "Please," I whispered. "I forgot." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You didn't forget. You were just too young." "That's worse," I said. She rolled onto her back, staring at the roof. "What good will it do, Akonkwa?" she asked. "Talking about it won't bring him back." "I just want to know what it felt like," I said. "Before." Her breath hitched. Noella lay beside them, facing the wall. She did not interrupt. She knew this conversation was coming. She had been waiting for it since the war began. Bahati finally spoke. "Christmas used to start early," she said quietly. "Papa would come home smiling like he was hiding something." "Like a secret?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "He would pretend everything was normal, but Mama always knew." I smiled a little. "What did Mama do?" "She cooked all day," Bahati said. She complained, but she smiled while doing it. The house smelled like onions and oil and meat. "Chicken," I repeated softly. "Yes," Bahati said, her voice shaking. "Chicken. Papa said Christmas without chicken and meat wasn't Christmas. And don't get me started on the neighbors and their loud music." She stopped. I waited. "He used to dance," she continued, her voice breaking. "Badly, on purpose, just to make us laugh." I laughed quietly. Then Bahati started crying. In the forest, John felt the season change. The men talked less. Some drank more, others grew crueler. At night, John remembered the smell of his wife's cooking, the sound of his daughter's laughter. He held on to those memories like wounds. "Did he laugh a lot?" I asked. "Yes," Bahati whispered, "especially when you tried to dance with him." "I don't remember," I said. "I know." We were quiet again. Behind us, Mama's shoulders shook. Noella pressed her face into the mat and let herself cry silently. She prayed without words. "I miss him," I said finally. Bahati reached for my hand. "So do I," she said. Outside, the camp buzzed with restless voices. Christmas was coming. Note that all charitors should be Africans in all shots and scenes. The air had grown colder, and I could feel it in my bones. Christmas was coming, and with it, that strange mix of excitement and longing that made my heart pound like a drum. I tugged at Bahati's arm as we walked back from Mama's vegetable stand. "Bahati," I whispered. "Tell me again. Tell me about the Christmas before." Bahati groaned, dropping the basket of wilted greens she carried. "Akonkwa, I told you already," she said. "Do you have to ask every day?" "But I want to hear it again," I insisted. "Please, just one more story?" She sighed, but her eyes softened. She sat down on a rock and motioned for me to come closer. "All right," she said, "but don't complain if it makes me cry." I smiled eagerly. "Christmas used to be bright," Bahati began, her voice trembling slightly. "Papa would start planning weeks ahead. He would wake up early, even before the sun, humming songs he made up himself. Mama would pretend to scold him for being so silly, but she'd smile while stirring the pots. I imagined it. The smell of onions and oil, the warm fire in the kitchen. My mouth watered just thinking about it. Papa would go to the market," Bahati continued, "and he would buy the biggest tomatoes, the freshest onions, sometimes even a chicken or a small goat. He would sneak little treats for us. I remember once he brought a tiny chocolate bar for you, and you cried because it was too sweet. I giggled, remembering the sweetness. Then Mama would cook all day, Bahati said, her voice thickening. She would hum while she worked, even when her back ached. And we would sit at the table, watching, waiting, smelling the food, trying not to fight over who would get the first taste. I nodded solemnly. And Papa danced too? Bahati laughed softly. Yes, he danced terribly. He would step on our feet, spin around, almost knock over the table. But he laughed so loud, we all laughed too. Mama would slap his arm and yell, "Stop it, John, stop it!" But she couldn't stop smiling. I held my breath. And the meat? Did we eat meat every year? Bahati shook her head, biting her lip. Not every year. Sometimes just chicken or goat. Sometimes just a little. But it didn't matter. The food smelled so good we were happy. Papa would say, "Christmas isn't about what's on the plate, it's about who's at the table." I could almost see it, the small wooden table, the family gathered, the warm fire, the laughter. Sometimes, Bahati said quietly, Papa would make us sing little songs we made up. Mama would join halfway through, and then Papa would start clapping, trying to keep the beat, and we'd all collapse laughing. Her voice caught, and I leaned against her shoulder. "It feels like it was yesterday," she whispered. "Even now, when the camp is cold and the food is almost gone, I remember that smell, that sound. I remember feeling safe, even for a moment." I squeezed her hand. "Can we have a little of that this year?" Bahati looked at Mama, who was quietly wiping her hands on her wrapper. Mama's eyes met ours, and a small smile appeared. "If I sell enough," she said quietly, "maybe we can have a proper Christmas meal this year. Maybe some meat for all of us. Just enough to taste a little of that happiness." I jumped up. "Really? Really, Mama?" "Yes," she said softly. "If we work hard, maybe." I couldn't stop smiling. That evening, the family walked to the makeshift church in the camp, a half-built school building with tattered plastic sheeting for windows. The floor was cold dirt, the ceiling patched with boards. Candles flickered in jars along the walls. The congregation was small but earnest. Children sat on the floor, clutching scraps of cloth as cushions. Women held babies, whispering prayers. Men leaned against walls, listening intently. The preacher's voice rang out, booming over the whispers. "Brothers and sisters," he said, lifting his hands, "we have little in this world, but we have faith, we have family, we have hope. Even in hunger, we are blessed. Even in fear, we are children of the Lord." Akonkwa held Bahati's hand tightly. The words wrapped around her chest like a warm blanket, almost drowning out the sound of the wind whistling through the broken walls. "Do not forget," the preacher continued, pacing slowly, "that love is stronger than suffering. Joy is possible, even when your bellies are empty. Christmas reminds us that light exists in the darkest of times. We are here, together, and that is worth more than gold." Some women nodded, murmuring, tears shining on their cheeks. Children stared wide-eyed, whispering to one another about angels and stars. Akonkwa tilted her head back, imagining the fire at home, Papa dancing, Mama stirring the pots. She squeezed Bahati's hand tighter and whispered, maybe this year can feel like that too." Bahati smiled faintly, watching the preacher gesture to the small, attentive crowd. "Yes," she said softly. "We will make it feel like that." On the walk back to our small house, I skipped, my heart full of warmth I hadn't felt in years. I imagined our tiny meal, the smells, the laughter, the songs we would hum. Even if it wasn't perfect, even if it was just a taste. Even here, in the middle of mud and cold, in a camp where life felt like it had stopped, Christmas was coming. And I was ready to believe it could be beautiful again.
The fire crackled in the darkness, sending sparks into the cold night air. John sat cross-legged on the dirt, his rifle propped against a tree. Around him, the other soldiers laughed and passed a small can of soup, everyone taking turns spooning out bitter liquid. "Remember last Christmas?" one of them said, slurping from the tin. "Back when we weren't here, in the mud, in the dark, smelling like smoke and sweat?" "Ha!" another laughed. "I had a goat once. My mama roasted it. It was the size of my head. Can't believe we used to eat so well." John smiled faintly. The memory made the cold bite of the present worse. "My family," John said quietly, almost to himself. We used to have chicken, sometimes meat. My eldest used to dance. And her mama, she cooked for hours. And her cooking." John closes his eyes, remembering his wife's cooking. A hush fell for a moment, and then a soldier snorted. "Your family?" one said, shaking his head. "Come on, man. You're wasting your breath. They're probably dead. The war doesn't care about your little girls." John's hands clenched. "I don't care. I want to see them. This Christmas. I hope I can..." "Hope?" another soldier barked, laughing. "Hope is for fools, John. Forget it. The war isn't ending. You think anyone will survive this mess to go home?" John's face burned with anger, but he stayed silent. The fire reflected in his eyes, a mixture of fury and longing. "I don't care what you think," he muttered under his breath. "I'll see them, somehow." The soldiers shook their heads and laughed, passing the soup again, ignoring him. But in that firelight, John's hope glimmered, stubborn and defiant, even if the world tried to snuff it out. The next morning, the camp hummed with life. Even the cold couldn't stop it. We were playing a game called Capture the Flag, though there were no flags, just a scrap of cloth tied to a stick. "Try to catch me," I shouted, dodging around a tent. "You'll never get it," called Cato, the tallest boy, grinning. Bahati stood on the edge, watching, her hands wrapped around a small tin cup of porridge. "Be careful," she called. I didn't care. I felt alive. For a moment, the camp didn't feel like a place of hunger and waiting. It felt like a playground, like any other Christmas season I could imagine. Some children chased each other through muddy paths. Others played marbles on cracked concrete slabs. A group of girls used sticks to draw patterns in the dirt, spinning imaginary stories about kings, queens, and Christmas feasts. Mothers stood near the cooking fires, stirring whatever small vegetables or maize they could afford, whispering to each other about sales and rations. Fathers, when they were present, helped their children carve small toys from scraps of wood. Even with the mud, the cold, and the hunger, life went on. Small joys clung to the camp like stubborn weeds. I paused by a small puddle and looked at my reflection. My hair was messy, my clothes patched, my feet filthy, but I was laughing. "Don't slow down," I shouted at Cato. He lunged at me, trying to grab the cloth. I darted away, heart pounding, adrenaline rushing. For a moment, I forgot everything. The hunger, the cold, the waiting, the fear. Then, when I sat down to catch my breath, I noticed the others gathering around Mama's small stand, helping her organize the few vegetables left. Even the smallest moments felt like a miracle. While John sat by the fire, imagining the warmth of his children's laughter and the smell of food, Akonkwa chased muddy feet across the camp, imagining the taste of a Christmas meal her mother promised might come. Both worlds, separate and distant, were filled with the same longing, for family, for joy, for something small to believe in. Even in the darkness of war and the harshness of the camp, hope survived in sparks, a memory, a game, a story, a shared laugh. That evening, after the game, I sat by Mama's stand, helping her count coins. My hands were sticky from vegetable juice, my clothes dusty. "Do you think this will be enough?" I asked, wide-eyed. Mama smiled, tired but determined. It will be enough, she said. Enough to make a little Christmas for us. I held Bahati's hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers. I imagined the fire at home, the dancing, the laughter, the smells Bahati had told me about.
The barracks were cold and dark, lit only by a few flickering lanterns. The smell of sweat, gun oil, and wet earth hung heavy in the air. John stood stiffly at attention, hands trembling slightly, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. He had rehearsed his words 100 times, but now that the moment was here, they felt inadequate. "Sir," he said, bowing his head slightly, I would like permission to check on my family. I will return immediately after. I will report back, I swear it." The commander, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, looked at him with the kind of calm cruelty that made men tremble. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and stared. "Your family?" the man said slowly, almost mockingly. "Do you understand where you are, soldier? There are no families here. There is only the war. You serve it. Everything else is irrelevant." John swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "I know, sir. I have served without question. I have followed every order. But I must know they are alive. I have children, a wife. I must see them, just for a moment." A murmur went through the other officers in the room. One of them, younger, sneered. "Do you think the world will stop for you, John? The war is not a holiday for your family. If they are alive, consider yourself lucky. You will return after the war, or when they are gone." John's stomach twisted, his mouth went dry. "Please, sir, I beg you, just a day, a moment, I promise, I will return." The commander shook his head slowly. "You are a good soldier, John, one of the best, but your place is here. After the war, or maybe if you are deemed unfit, you may go. Until then, you stay." John's fists clenched. Rage and heartbreak collided inside him. His knees felt weak. He had dreamed of this moment for years, imagined the reunion, the smell of his home, the faces of his daughters, and it had been ripped away. "Yes, sir," he said quietly, his voice breaking. He saluted and left the room, his heart heavy, his hope slipping through his fingers like sand. That night, John sat alone on the edge of the camp, staring at the darkened forest beyond. The stars seemed distant, indifferent. He thought of the small hands of his daughters, the way his wife would smile even when she was tired, the laughter that had once filled their small home. And now, he might never see them again. The hopelessness pressed down like a heavy stone. Every obedient day, every silent nod, every risk he had taken to survive. For what? For the war, for the orders, for nothing. He wanted to scream, to curse, to throw himself into the dirt and disappear. But he did not. He had learned long ago that survival required restraint, and restraint had kept him alive all these years. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon. John sat by a small fire, staring at the embers, when a familiar shadow fell across him. It was General Mbemba, one of the few men John trusted, and one who had risen through the ranks alongside him. "John," the general said quietly, sitting down beside him. "I heard what happened last night." John looked up, his eyes red. They will not let me go. Not now. Not ever." Mbemba shook his head. "They don't know the value of family. Or maybe they do, but they care more about the war than about men like you. But I can help." John's heart leapt. You can?" "Yes," Mbemba said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You are trusted. You have served well. You have risen in rank. They will allow you to leave, but under strict conditions. You go to see your family. You do not speak of this with anyone. You return immediately. And once you leave, you cannot see them again until the war is over, which could take months, even years. Do you understand?" John's chest felt tight, a mixture of disbelief and elation. I understand. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mbemba gave him a small, almost sad smile. Go, John. This is your chance. And remember, you have earned it because you have been loyal, because you have endured. Do not waste it. John's lips trembled. He nodded quickly. I won't. I promise. I'll come back. As Mbemba left, John felt the first real surge of hope in years. His heart pounded with excitement and fear. Finally, all the obedience, all the years of following orders, of surviving in silence, had paid off. He allowed himself to imagine the small moments he had dreamed of for so long. The smell of food, the laughter of his daughters, the warmth of a fire in his home. For the first time in 5 long years, hope was not just a memory, it was tangible, within his grasp. But he also knew the cost. One misstep, one failure, and it could all be taken away. He had to return. He had to survive. Back in the camp, I ran across the muddy paths, dragging Kato along with me as we played. The other children shouted and laughed, chasing a scrap of cloth we pretended was a Christmas gift. Catch me, I screamed, jumping over puddles. Kato nearly fell over. I will get you this time, Akonkwa. Bahati sat on a log, watching, shaking her head but smiling. You never slow down, she said. I can't. Christmas is coming, I shouted. I want to help Mama. I want everything to be perfect. Mama stood by her stand, arranging the vegetables with careful precision, smiling faintly at our shouts. One step at a time, she said. One small Christmas at a time. And for now, that was enough. I woke up to the smell of onions sizzling over the fire and a faint, smoky aroma of maize. My stomach growled so loudly I thought it might wake the whole camp. Mama, Mama, I shouted, almost tripping over my sandals. Is it ready? Do we have meat? Mama looked up from the small wooden stand where she had arranged a few vegetables and the tiny chicken she had managed to buy. Her face was tired, but the smile that reached her eyes warmed me more than the fire ever could. Not much, Akonkwa, she said softly, but enough for us to have a proper Christmas. Enough to taste, at least. I clapped my hands. I can help. I'll carry the plates. I'll make sure nothing falls. Bahati, leaning against a nearby wall with a small tin cup of porridge, shook her head with a soft laugh. Slow down, little one. You'll spill everything before we even sit down. I pouted but ignored her. My heart was too full. After so many years, a Christmas meal, even a tiny one, felt like a miracle. They gathered around a low wooden board that served as their table. Mama divided the small chicken, maize, and vegetables as evenly as she could, placing scraps of tomatoes and onions alongside. Eat slowly, Akonkwa, Mama said. Don't fight over the chicken. I'm not fighting, I protested, though my eyes sparkled with mischief. Bahati chuckled, picking up a small piece of chicken. We will all be full soon. It's not about the amount, little one. It's about being together. I pretended to nod solemnly, but had already snatched the largest piece for myself when Mama wasn't looking. My hands shook with excitement as I took a bite. The flavors were simple, but to me, they were richer than any feast I had imagined in years. This is amazing, I whispered between bites. Mama, it's really Christmas. Mama smiled faintly, brushing dirt from my hair. It is what we make it, Akonkwa. Even here, in this camp. Outside, the other children had claimed the muddy field as their playground. A scrap of cloth tied to a stick became a makeshift flag, and sticks were swords in imaginary battles. Catch me if you can, I shouted, running past Kato, who was trying desperately to tag me without falling in the puddles. You'll never get away, Akonkwa, he yelled, slipping on the mud, but laughing all the same. A group of girls circled around, braiding grass and flowers into crowns and pretending to be queens of a Christmas kingdom. Some younger boys were rolling marbles on cracked concrete slabs, cheering loudly whenever someone won. Even in the mud, the cold, and the hunger, the children laughed and shouted, creating small sparks of joy that made the camp feel alive. Later, the family made their way to the camp's makeshift church, a half-built school building with patched windows and boards. The floor was uneven dirt, and the ceiling barely held against the wind. Flickering candles cast long shadows on the walls. The preacher stepped forward, his voice carrying across the room. "Children of the camp," he began, raising his hands. "We have little, but we are not without. We have life. We have family. We have hope." Mothers clutched their children, whispering prayers, while children stared wide-eyed at the man who seemed to command light even in the darkness. "Even in hunger we can rejoice," the preacher continued, pacing slowly. "Even in hardship we can celebrate. Christmas is not only about food or gifts, it is about love, kindness, and moments like these, when we are together and remember that light exists even in the darkest of times." I squeezed Bahati's hand tightly, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. My heart beat fast. Light existed here, in laughter, in the smell of food, in the warmth of Mama's smile, in the voices of friends and strangers who shared this small miracle. After the sermon, we returned to our home. I helped Mama serve small portions to some children who had wandered over, and their laughter mixed with ours as they ate. "Look, I carried it without spilling," I said proudly, holding a plate of chicken in my sticky hands. Bahati laughed, brushing a smear of dirt from my cheek. "See? You are growing up, Akonkwa." I felt like the richest child in the world. The fire, the laughter, the food, even the mud, it was perfect. Even here, in the middle of the camp, amidst hunger and cold, Christmas had come. And for one day, the world felt whole again. The path to the camp was muddy and uneven, lit only by the weak glow of the morning sun breaking through heavy clouds. John's boots were caked in dirt, his uniform worn and patched, his face lined with exhaustion and the roughness of years in the field. The familiar scent of wet earth mixed with smoke and cooking fires made his chest tighten. He carried a small sack of supplies, a few fresh vegetables, a small chicken, and some sweet grains he had managed to barter for along the way. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make this Christmas something extraordinary for his family. As the camp came into view, he slowed, heart hammering. His daughters, Akonkwa and Bahati, were running barefoot through the muddy paths, laughing with other children. He swallowed hard. I saw someone standing near the edge of the camp. He was tall, his uniform strange and patched, a small sack over his shoulder. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't recognize him at first. "Who? Who is that?" I whispered to Bahati. She squinted. I don't know. Maybe one of the men from the outer camp?" I stared, trying to make sense of him. Something about the way he moved, the way he paused, tense, as if afraid to be seen, it felt familiar. John saw his family from a distance, his chest tight with longing. His eyes softened when he saw Mama, once the softest woman he had ever known, now thin and worn from years of struggle. He swallowed the lump in his throat and called out in a voice he tried to steady. "Noella, Bahati, Akonkwa." The girls froze. Akonkwa turned, her eyes wide, and for a moment she couldn't place him. "You? Who are you?" she asked cautiously, stepping back. John's lips trembled. It's me, your father, John." That was when it broke him. Not the years of fighting, not the hunger, not the beatings. "Who are you?" His daughters did not know his face. John remembered small hands clinging to his legs. Laughter. A baby voice calling him Papa. Now there was only silence. 5 years had passed. He had missed first days of school, lost teeth, growth spurts, tears he should have wiped away. Time had been cruel. He swallowed hard. Akonkwa's head tilted. His face was different. lined and hardened by years she couldn't imagine. She blinked, trying to make sense of him. I stepped closer. "You don't look like him," I said honestly. The man smiled through tears. "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry." "Papa?" she asked softly, almost in disbelief. "Yes?" he whispered, taking slow steps forward. "I'm here. I brought something for Christmas." He lifted the small sack and placed it gently near Mama. John's eyes fell on Noella, and he felt his chest tighten. She was frail, thinner than he remembered, the softness of her face now sharpened by hunger and worry. She had aged in ways he could not have imagined. "John?" she whispered, voice catching. Her hands trembled as she reached out, touching his face. He broke down silently, tears streaking dirt-stained cheeks. I made it back," he said. "I'm here." Noella's eyes glistened with tears. You came back." "I promised," he said, voice cracking. "I promised I would come back." I ran forward, my heart pounding. The man before me was my father, but he looked different. Older, worn. His shoulders were broader, but his face, it was hard to recognize. "Papa!" I shouted, throwing myself into his arms. He lifted me carefully, hugging me tight. I felt the warmth of him, the smell of him, and I almost couldn't breathe for joy. You've grown," he said softly, holding me at arm's length to look at me. "I've waited so long," I said, tears streaming down my face. He kissed the top of my head. "And I've waited longer." Bahati ran up next, hugging him fiercely. "Papa!" she cried. John laughed through his tears, overwhelmed. "Both of you, my girls, I'm here. Finally." They gathered around the small fire with the little sack of food John had brought. The chicken sizzled over the embers, the vegetables steamed in a small pot, and the sweet grains filled the air with a comforting smell. Children from nearby tents joined them, sharing the little feast. Laughter rang out over the muddy paths. Even in the middle of the camp, the warmth of family, food, and hope transformed the day into something extraordinary. Akonkwa ran to help Mama serve portions, her hands sticky but proud. "Look, Papa, everyone can have some chicken." John smiled, watching his family work together. He picked up a small scrap of cloth and pretended it was a flag, making Akonkwa laugh until she fell into his arms. Later that night, the camp's makeshift preacher gathered the children and families around the fire. He spoke simply, his voice strong despite the cold wind. "Today," he said, "we celebrate life. We celebrate family. Even in the hardest times, we find hope. Even when the world is cruel, love can return. Look around you. Today is a gift. Today is light." The congregation murmured and nodded, many wiping tears from their faces. Children laughed and danced around the fire, small voices echoing like music. Akonkwa squeezed her father's hand. "It's real," she whispered. All of this, it's real." John smiled, holding both daughters close. "It is," he said. That night, I lay on my mat, full of food, full of laughter, full of hope. The fire crackled outside, the other children's voices fading into the distance. For the first time in years, Christmas felt like a miracle. Papa was here, Mama was here, Bahati was here, and I was truly happy again. And that, I realized, was enough.